In the deep of the night, as the torches on the palace walls began to flicker out, and the wind whispered ancient secrets, a storm raged in the heart of the king. This was a king who had beheaded enemies and saved his kingdom from a river of blood, yet now he stood on the precipice of a decision that would not only shake history, but humanity itself. The king was named Isizurok the Sun, and his empire stretched across mountains, rivers, and countless villages. But perhaps his greatest strength was his son, Prince Elas, an innocent, intelligent, kind-hearted, and dignified young man who was beloved by the people. Yet this very popularity was slowly becoming a poison. Plots had begun to hatch in the palace. Poisonous whispers found their way to the ears of the ministers. Elas dreams of being king. He has bewitched the people. The courtiers wore smiles on their faces while their hearts burned with fire. The king's heart began to fill with doubt. One night, as Elas sat in the garden with his mother, counting the stars, the prime minister crept silently into the king's chambers. "Your Majesty, the time has come. If he is not stopped today, tomorrow the throne will slip from your hands." Isizurok stared at him but said nothing. The war raging in his heart had just intensified. A few days later, the king invited Elas to go hunting. The prince was happy, not knowing that this hunt would be for more than just animals. It would be a hunt for trust, family, and humanity itself. The hunting party entered the thick forest. The king, the prince, a few guards, and 2 servants, all with serious expressions except Elas, who was smiling. He didn't know that the very people around him had become his enemies. In the middle of the forest stood an old, crumbling cave that had been deserted for centuries. The king ordered everyone to rest there. As the darkness of night enveloped the cave, Elas fell into a strange sleep. Something had been mixed into his wine. When he opened his eyes, his hands and feet were bound, and he was in a dark pit. He could hear the sound of earth falling from above. The prince screamed, "Father, what is happening?" A shadow leaned over, and the king's broken voice was heard. "Forgive me, my son. You were too good. Perhaps too good." Elas screamed and struggled, but the earth kept falling on him. His cries echoed in the walls. And then slowly, everything fell silent. Some moments, some decisions, change all of history. A father, to save his kingdom, buried his own son alive. But what is buried is not always gone forever. The story didn't end. This was only the beginning. History is silent, but sometimes it speaks in whispers and sobs. That night, when King Isizurok II buried his own son alive, it wasn't just the earth that shook. The deepest pillars of the empire trembled. It was a moment no one saw, but every stone, every tree, and every shadow became a witness. Morning arrived, and a heavy silence hung over the palace walls. Prince Elas had not returned. The people of the palace were surprised, and Queen Zora was frantic. "He is the peace of my heart. Where has my son gone?" she would ask again and again. But the king's face was strangely frozen. There was no softness in his eyes, no pain in his voice. The king made an announcement. "Prince Elas fell prey to a wild beast during a hunt in the forest. We did not find his body, but he is no longer with us." A period of mourning was announced in the palace, but it was a fake mourning, far from any real grief. Only one heart knew the truth, Queen Zora's. At night, she would wake up screaming, "Elas, come back, I can hear your footsteps." The palace maids would say that the queen had the same dream every night, a dark pit, a child screaming, and a hand reaching towards the sky. One night, Queen Zora summoned the king's personal servant, Razik. "Tell me the truth. Was my son lost to some conspiracy?" Razik's eyes trembled. He remained silent for a while, and then the words that came from his lips were no less than a sword. "Your Highness, I saw it myself. The prince was buried alive, on the king's order." He was screaming. "Mother!" The queen's scream echoed through the entire palace. She became semi-conscious, and her tears silently absorbed into history that night. The next day, another rumor spread through the palace. Queen Zora had left the palace and gone with a caravan of ascetics. But the story didn't stop there. Meanwhile, in that forest, that cave, and that pit where Prince Elias was buried, strange things began to happen. The local shepherds started saying that at night they could hear the sound of someone crying from inside the cave. Sometimes a whisper, sometimes a child's voice crying, "Mother!" One day, an ascetic passed through that forest. He stopped. He closed his eyes and put his ear to the ground. The earth is speaking. It is suffering. An innocent person was buried alive here. The ascetic's name was Sheikh Naim. He was one of those who could hear the voices of dreams and touch the truth of the earth. He told his servants there, "This place is not holy, it is oppressed. What is buried here is not completely buried yet. His story remains." The ascetic's words were the beginning of a new stir. People came there to pray. Some tried to see with their own eyes. Some ran away in fear. But what was buried? Was it truly dead? Or was there still a heartbeat in his chest? Can a soul still breathe after being buried alive? Or has history failed to silence his voice? These questions began to echo in every corner of the empire. What was buried was now preparing to return. 3 years had passed. The empire was now like silent, burning ash. King Isizurok II's face was filled with wrinkles, but they were not of age, they were of remorse and sleeplessness. Every night he had the same dream. A face covered in dirt, tears in its eyes, and only one plea on its lips. "Father, why did you kill me?" Isizurok was afraid to sleep. Even in the light, shadows followed him. He was a king, but now he was a prisoner in his own kingdom. But this wasn't just his dream. One night, at the southern gate of the palace, the guards saw a strange boy. Long hair, torn clothes, anger in his eyes, and old scars on his body. The boy said only one sentence, "I have to meet the king. He is my murderer, and I am his heir." The guards were stunned. The boy seemed crazy, but there was something in his voice that could silence any reasonable person. The commander was called, then the prime minister, and finally, King Isizurok was informed. "A boy has arrived who calls himself Prince Elia. He's alive." Isizurok's body trembled. The goblet fell from his hand, and wine spilled on the floor. "This isn't possible," he whispered. "I myself, with my own hands." But he was alive. Elias, the prince who was buried alive, had broken through the earth and returned. Was it really him, or was it just an illusion? Some say it wasn't Elias, but the shadow of his soul. Some say he was the prince's twin, raised by the ascetics. But whatever he was, his eyes did not lie. Queen Zora, who had been away from the palace for years, heard the news and immediately came to the palace. And as soon as she looked into the boy's eyes, she burst into tears. "My son, you've come back." For the first time, Isizurok fell at his son's feet and begged for forgiveness. But some wounds are not just on the body, they are on the soul, and their balm is not just time, it is justice. Prince Elias did not announce his kingship. He didn't want the throne or the crown. He said only one sentence, "I was buried alive. Now I am not afraid to die, but it is my promise to cleanse this kingdom of lies and blood." Isizurok abdicated his kingship and went into solitude. The people never knew how Prince Elias survived for 3 years under the earth. Did he survive, or did he return from death? They say the ascetics dug him out and kept his soul alive. They say he wasn't like living people, but history remained silent, and only a stone was placed on a grave, on which was written, "Here he was buried, who, though buried, lived."